Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the EOB podcast. So last weekend we have the release of Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, which is the sequel to the monster hit, the Monster 2005 hit, which at that time had the highest opening for a movie ever at 208 million. So let's see how the sequel did at the box office. Alright, so let's jump right in. So unsurprisingly, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom pulled in 108 million at the box office. It opened at number 1. So how did that differ from my projection? I projected that the movie would open to 150 million. When Stan and I were doing the podcast together, we said that the first Jurassic World movie was a movie that was at the right place, right time. The world was ready for a dinosaur movie, and Jurassic World scratched that itch. And for the sequel, I felt that that itch got scratched with the first movie, and that the sequel wouldn't open as huge as the first movie, even though the first movie, while it didn't wow anybody, it was decent, it was okay, right? So I felt that the opening wouldn't be in the 200 million range. Even despite that, I felt that the movie could open to about 150 million, and the 148 million was just right there, like 2 million off from my projections, which is recently, if you listen to the podcast, I was kind of off on my projections, but this one I got right there, 150 million opening. So yay, just as I projected, right? Okay, the first movie had is pretty well liked by critics, like 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the sequel, Fallen Kingdom, had only a 70% tomato meter rating, but the audience liked it. It has a A- cinema score, so that means the audience generally liked the movie while critics hated it. And I read I think the Washington Post, one of the critics, calling for the failure of the movie because they don't want this franchise or whatever, the product that they have on screen, to continue any longer. So they had enough of dinosaurs, and I guess Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom was the straw that broke her back in regard to the movie. So I guess that's why she's calling for this movie to fail. But judging by the audience score, right? I think it will hold up well, right? Even though the critics 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. As we know, summer movies are typically review proof if it's popular enough, right? Typically, we've seen it enough times where critics might hate a movie, but it did really well at the box office, and Jurassic World 2 Fallen Kingdom could hold up well because it came at a time when people, the audience for this movie, haven't seen the previous movies. But this is a new experience to the audience, the younger audience, who have not experienced previous Jurassic Worlds or Jurassic Parks. So that's why I feel that the drop off, while it's gonna be in the 50s, high, it could be in the 60s as well, it's gonna stay in theaters because of how well it opened to. It opened up high, and it's gonna take a while to tumble down. And of course, obviously, it's not gonna be as big as the first movie, Jurassic World. It's gonna do decent. As far as sequels go, it's doing pretty well, right? And overseas right now, it already made 567 million overseas for a worldwide total of 715 million. So I think we're going to see more Jurassic World movies, another sequel coming along. So the Universal has another hit on their hands, and this is a franchise that could come back and milk again and again. All right, let's move on to the second movie on our list. Coming in number 2 at the box office is The Incredibles 2, the sequel to Brad Bird's 2004 movie. I said the movie could open to like 80 to 90 million because of how long it was between movies. The first movie opened in 2004, and like 10 plus years later, the sequel appears, and it kind of takes place right after the first movie. So I said the movie could open to between 80 to 90 million conservatively. That's the estimates because, I didn't know how beloved the first movie was. Typically with movies, Pixar movies in particular, like Finding Nemo, the sequel did even better because of how well how well people loved the first movie, right? The people loved the Finding Nemo, and the sequel did better, even though review-wise it wasn't as good as the first movie. And Incredibles 2, so many years has passed, I think 14 plus years, and then we see a sequel. And it did way better than my estimate. It opened to 182 million. I guess that's the highest opening for an animated movie ever. And then overseas, as typically with animated movies, right? Especially Pixar movies, especially in China. China's doesn't, for some reason, doesn't get Pixar. So that's a huge box office right there, and they're not getting a piece of that pie. So the worldwide gross right now is 484 million, and it's not helped by politics, geopolitics that's going on right now with the trade wars that's going on. With each, all the countries raising tariffs on each other. So that could be a reason why, but typically, as we know, Pixar movies typically don't usually do that well in China. So that's why we're not seeing a huge overseas box office. But also Pixar kind of roll out their release. They don't release their movies everywhere at once. So that's why we don't see a huge foreign take. Only 134 million thus far. So, as it roll out to, more countries, we'll see, the box office becoming larger and larger. So the, domestic gross for The Incredibles 2 right now is 349 million, which has already surpassed the first movie's 261 million domestic take. So, and this is only in the second weekend, so it has a ways to go. And according to projections, right, it could make over 500 million domestically. So we'll see how if it can reach there or not. And in the second weekend, if I haven't mentioned that already, it dropped 56% from the previous weekend to pull in 80 million. And I guess 56% is it's an okay drop off, considering it opened so huge. And but I think it will stabilize in subsequent weeks. And also because Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom is also in theaters, so they have overlapping audience as well. So that's why we see a huge chunk, being taken by Jurassic World. But both movies will have a long shelf life in theaters, I feel. All right. Let's move on to number 3, Ocean's 8, which is the female version of the Ocean 11 movies, led by who's it? Sandra Bullock. I always kind of get mixed Sandra Bullock up with Julia Roberts for some reason or another. So led by Sandra Bullock, Ocean's 8, in this third weekend pulled in 11.5 million. Drop off is relatively low, about 39%. So domestic gross right now is 100 million, and let's see what its worldwide take is. It's 171 million. So, and the budget's only 70. So for a movie that I thought would not appeal to that wide of an audience, because I thought that was gimmick casting. It surprised me. It did really well here. Overseas is a bit okay, but it hasn't opened that wide yet overseas. So it's doing well for a movie that I thought was gimmick casting. So we're gonna see more Ocean movies based on these female characters. All right, number 4 is the movie Tag. In the second weekend, it pulled in 8.3 million. The movie starring Jeremy Renner, John Hamm, Ed Helms, and a couple others, about a group of adults playing this game of tag, for a month in a year. Already comedy. Yeah, the movie did about where I had it. I had the movie opening between 10 to 15 million, and the movie opened to about 14.9 million, which is 15, the higher end of my estimates. And the second weekend it kind of held on. About drop off is about 45% from the previous weekend. The budget is only 28 million and already crossed that domestically with 30.4 million. And of course, it hasn't opened that wide overseas yet, only 3 million overseas for a worldwide total of 33 million. But of course, as we know, comedies don't usually travel well overseas. So I expect this movie to kind of top off maybe in the 55 to 60 million range when it's said and done. All right, number 5 is the superhero movie Deadpool, the R-rated sequel to Fox's superhero movie. It pulled in about 5.3 million over the weekend. The drop-off is about 40%. 304 million so far domestically and worldwide. It's 707 million. All right, let's move on to number 6 is Solo, a Star Wars story. It's drop off huge. In this 5th weekend, it pulled in 4.5 million. Over the weekend, drop off is about 55% from its previous weekend. Domestic gross is only 202 million, and overseas is at 151 million for a total of 354 million. So Solo, a Star Wars story. As we said, we don't know if this is a blip in the Star Wars filmography, right? But Disney and Lucasfilms kind of took it as not. They in the news, right? They said that they're going to cancel or slow down, halt the Boba Fett movie, and the other movie. I don't know which one was that. Yeah, I'll get back to you next podcast to see which one they canceled. So Disney is taking this Solo performance seriously because for Star Wars movie, it's definitely not doing good. Only 354 million so far worldwide, and Disney is expecting like 1 billion. For Star Wars movie, for performance like this one, is completely out of their expectations, and they're halting the productions of further spin-offs until they can figure out what's wrong. We said that it could be Star Wars fatigue, right? There's too much Star Wars movies coming along that then further the storyline of in Star Wars universe. The Star Wars spin-off that Rogue One did well, right? And they figure out, hey, Solo, and I think everybody else thought, Solo, the movie that's based on one of the major characters in the Star Wars universe, would do even better. But no, it's like one of the worst performing Star Wars movies ever. And they couldn't figure out a reason why, and it could be that there was too much Star Wars right now, and it's smart of them to halt production of whatever they're doing, especially the non-mainline movies, to figure out what's going on. Of course they want to mine the Star Wars universe like they mine the Marvel movie superhero movies, but it's something that they couldn't do right now because fans or the audiences are turning away this Star Wars movies, even though we make 354 million overseas or worldwide. It's not good enough for Star Wars movies. So that's where we stand. Further spin-offs is on hold, and I guess we'll see more mainline Star Wars movies. It could be a case of too much Star Wars. That's what they're Disney is trying to find out. Trying to diagnose this, do a post-mortem, and hopefully they could get better. All right, let's move on to number 7 is the horror film Hereditary. I pulled in about 3.6 million over the weekend. 47% drop off, right? Of course, it lost theaters to Jurassic World. For a domestic total of 35 million, and worldwide is at 48 million. Okay, let's move on to number 8, Superfly, a movie that I thought would perform, but it did not. A movie that's targeted toward the African American audience. Typically, this audience would rush out in theaters, front load the movie, but they didn't turn out for this one. It only opened to about 6.9 million, and then drop off of 50% in the second weekend for about 15.3 million in domestic so far. All right, let's move on to number 9, which is Avengers Infinity War. It pulled in 2.6 million over the weekend, 52% drop off in its 9th weekend. Domestic gross is 669 million, and worldwide it's 2 billion. It's at 2 billion. So it's doing really well here, doing really well overseas, and at the all-time domestic right now is number 4. It looks just behind Star Wars The Force Awakens, Avatar, Black Panther, and let's see where worldwide is at. Okay, at worldwide it's at number 4 as well, just behind Avatar, Titanic, Force Awakens. So it surpassed Jurassic World. So hey, Solo didn't do well, but Avengers Infinity War and the rest of the superhero movies are still carrying Disney along. All right, let's close out the top 10 with a surprising entry. It's the documentary Won't You Be My Neighbor. Is the one, the movie about Mr. Roger, about Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. It put in about 1.8 million in its expansion. It added 252 theaters. All right. Let's move on to the new releases this weekend. We have 2 wide releases. We have Sicario 2, which is a sequel to the 2015 movie, and then we have Uncle Drew, a movie that started off as a commercial starring Kyrie Irving, who was previously with the Cleveland Cavaliers, an NBA player. Now he's with the Boston Celtics. So yes, they expanded a commercial into a movie for Uncle Drew. All right, let's start off with Sicario 2, Day of the Soldado. It's a sequel to the 2015 movie. And if you haven't heard about it, it was because it was a limited release, platform release. It was well reviewed. It has, I think, the first movie had a 93% on the on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it was in award consideration as well. I'm not sure if it got a nom or not, but it was talked by the critics. I'm not sure if it got any nominations, as I said. And now we have a sequel. Why did it have a sequel? I don't know. Well, because the first movie did okay, right? About 85 million worldwide. 446 million of that is from the domestic box office, and the budget is only 30 million. The first movie was released by Lionsgate. The sequel is released by Sony Columbia. So could be the case that Lionsgate didn't want to release a sequel. Because while it did okay, it wasn't spectacular, and the first movie was well reviewed, but the sequel has only a tomato meter of 69%, and I expect that percentage should drop off when it comes on to opening day on Friday as more reviews comes in. Right, the movie stars Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin. Del Toro is the hitman in Mexico, and Brolin is the FBI agent, or CIA, I guess, who enlisted his help in cleaning up the streets, I guess. I don't know how well the sequel is gonna do. I mean, the first movie did okay, right? But I'm not sure if anyone asked for a sequel. Sicario is one of these titles where nobody asked for a sequel, but they made one anyway, right? I mean, it did okay, but I don't think it did gangbusters, right? I think audiences really didn't ask for a sequel to Sicario. So I think the sequel is probably going to open somewhere similar, because hey, fans of the first movie, if they like it, they might show up for the sequel, or they might have enough of the sequel, or they might have enough of the Sicario. And I believe Sicario means hitman in Mexican, Spanish. So I believe this movie could open to about 8 to 10 million. Yeah. So not high on the sequel, because like I said, it's a movie that nobody asked for a sequel, and they made one anyway. And I don't think the performance of the first movie, even though it's well reviewed, justified the sequel. All right, let's move on to Uncle Drew. It's a basketball movie. Guest starring Kyrie Irving, Shaquille O'Neal, Chris Webber, Reggie Miller, Nate Robinson, and Lisa Leslie. About a guy who asked his uncle, played by Kyrie Irving, dressed in old people costume, to come out of retirement to play this game against another team. Not exactly Space Jam 2, right? But it's kind of there. Started off as a commercial about Uncle Drew, disguised himself as an old man and started beating up these youngsters. And they made a full movie out of this. I'm not sure the appeal of this movie outside of basketball fans. I don't think basketball fans want to watch this movie. I don't think anyone wants to watch this movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did well, because hey, this is celebrity gazing, right? This is stargazing, with the not big name NBA stars, but it is a comedy. It has Kyrie Irving in it. I'm not sure how well he is liked in this NBA environment, in the current environment right now, because he went from a championship contending team, with LeBron James, to another team asking for trade to the Boston Celtics. So I don't know if he's liked in the basketball circles anymore, and then the Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, if they people want to watch a Space Jam 2, they could go for that, or that movie's coming out. But again, I'm not sure if Uncle Drew is that movie. But I think it's advertised well. You can go far with advertising, in space, in movies. So I think this movie could open somewhere between 15 to 20 million. I wouldn't be surprised if it opened higher, because of said stars, right? But I don't know how if anyone takes this movie seriously. People could be just looking for like a fun night out, and Uncle Drew is that comedy for them. All right, so that's it for this week's podcast. We have Sicario, the day of the Soldado opening. I think 8 to 10 million for that. And then Uncle Drew, a movie that I don't think would appeal, but I said just based on the name alone and advertising, it could open to 15 to 20 million, but I wouldn't be surprised if it opened higher. All right, that's it for this podcast. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.